My wife doesn't want you traveling with us. This time it's just family. I had been paying for their house for years. I called the bank and put the house up for sale. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I thought I'd seen enough of life's cruelties. I was wrong. Nothing prepared me for the moment my own son looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't family enough to join their vacation. My wife doesn't want you traveling with us this time, Mom. It's just family. Richard's words hit me like a physical blow. Just family. As if 34 years of being his mother meant nothing. As if the woman who changed his diapers, nursed him through every fever, and celebrated every achievement was suddenly an outsider. I stood in their kitchen, the same kitchen I'd helped design when I bought them this house 4 years ago. The granite countertops I'd insisted on, the custom cabinets I'd paid for, even the fancy refrigerator that cost more than some people's cars. All of it funded by me, and now I was being told I didn't belong. Gianna sat at the island, her manicured fingers wrapped around a coffee mug, not even bothering to look up from her phone. She hadn't said a word, but her smug silence spoke volumes. This was her doing. Richard never would have had the backbone to exclude me on his own. Richard, honey, I don't understand. I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. We've been planning this trip for months. I already booked my flight. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Plans change, Mom. Gianna thinks it would be better if we had some time as just our little family. You understand, right? No, I didn't understand. What I understood was that my daughter-in-law had been working systematically to push me out of their lives, and my son was too weak to stand up to her. What I understood was that the woman I'd welcomed into my family with open arms had been planning my exile from day one. Your little family, I repeated slowly. The words tasted bitter. The little family whose mortgage I've been paying for 4 years? Richard's face flushed red. Mom, that's not fair. You offered to help us buy the house. I did more than help, Richard. I bought it. Outright. Then put it in your name because I wanted you to feel like a provider for your wife. My voice grew steadier as the pieces clicked into place. $800,000. That's what I paid for this house. Your dream house, as Gianna called it. For the first time since I'd arrived, Gianna looked up from her phone. Her dark eyes were cold, calculating. That was your choice, Sandra. Nobody forced you. My choice. As if giving everything to your children is ever really a choice for a mother. As if love doesn't make you do impossible things, foolish things, generous things that leave you vulnerable. I looked around the kitchen again, seeing it differently now. This wasn't a family home. This was a transaction. They'd taken my money, my generosity, my love, and turned it into leverage against me. Every payment I'd made, every bill I'd covered, every sacrifice I'd made thinking I was securing my place in their lives had actually been funding my own exclusion. You're right, Gianna. It was my choice. I pulled my phone from my purse, my hands surprisingly steady. And now I'm making another one. Richard frowned. Mom, what are you doing? I scrolled through my contacts until I found my bank's number. The same bank where I'd arranged the mortgage, where I'd transferred funds month after month to ensure their comfort. My finger hovered over the call button for just a moment. Mom! Richard's voice had an edge of panic now. I pressed call. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. First National Bank, this is Margaret. How can I help you today? Margaret, this is Sandra Williams. I need to discuss the property on Maple Street. I kept my voice calm, professional. I'd like to put it on the market immediately. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. I could feel Richard and Gianna staring at me, but I kept my eyes fixed on the window, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder I'd bought for their backyard. Certainly, Mrs. Williams. Are you referring to the property currently titled under Richard Williams? That's correct. I'm the actual owner. I have all the documentation. How quickly can we list it? Mom, what are you doing? Richard's whisper was frantic now. I held up one finger, motioning for him to wait. Margaret continued. We can have a real estate agent contact you this afternoon if you'd like. Given the current market, houses in that neighborhood are selling within weeks. Perfect. Please arrange that. I hung up and finally turned to face my son and daughter-in-law. Gianna's face had gone pale. Richard looked like he'd been slapped. Mom, you can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, Richard. You said it yourself. I'm not family. So why should I be paying for family expenses? The cardinal flew away, leaving the feeder empty and swaying in the breeze. The real estate agent called at 3 o'clock that same afternoon. By 4, she was standing in what used to be my son's living room, clipboard in hand, discussing market values and staging recommendations. Richard and Gianna sat on their leather sofa like stunned deer, watching their world crumble in real time. The market's incredibly hot right now. The agent, a sharp woman named Carol, explained. A house this size in this neighborhood with these upgrades? We're looking at a bidding war. I'd estimate we could close within 30 days. 30 days. The timeline hit Richard like a physical blow. He kept opening his mouth as if to speak, then closing it again. Gianna, on the other hand, had found her voice. This is insane, she hissed the moment Carol stepped outside to take photos of the exterior. You can't just sell someone's house out from under them. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. Because it's my house. My name is on the deed. My money bought every square foot of it. But Richard's name is on the title, she shot back, desperation creeping into her voice. As a beneficiary, not an owner. I kept legal ownership for tax purposes. I'd done my homework when I bought this place, despite their pressure to sign it over completely. Some instinct had told me to protect myself. Thank God I'd listened. Richard finally found his voice. Mom, please. Let's talk about this rationally. You're upset, I get it, but selling our house? That's extreme. What's extreme, Richard, is a son telling his mother she's not family enough to vacation with them. What's extreme is me paying $800,000 for a house, plus 4 years of maintenance, insurance, and property taxes, only to be treated like a stranger in my own investment. It was never supposed to be an investment, Gianna snapped. You said it was a gift. Gifts are for people who appreciate them, people who treat the giver with respect. I stood up, gathering my purse. Since I'm clearly not family, I'm removing myself from family finances as well. That's when the begging started. Richard followed me to the front door, his voice cracking. Mom, please. We can work this out. Maybe we misunderstood about the vacation. No misunderstanding, honey. You were very clear. Gianna doesn't want me there. And you're choosing her comfort over your mother's feelings. That's your right as a husband. But it's also my right as a homeowner to decide what to do with my property. Where are we supposed to go? Gianna had emerged from the living room, her composure finally cracking. We can't afford rent on a place like this. Not with Richard's salary. That sounds like a personal problem, I replied. Perhaps you should have thought about that before deciding. I wasn't family enough to include in your plans. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Richard had clearly spent the night in panic mode. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk. This is crazy. You can't really mean to go through with this. Gianna is crying. She says she's sorry. Can we please just discuss this? And then around 3 in the morning the tone shifted. You're being manipulative and cruel. I can't believe my own mother would threaten to make us homeless. Gianna was right about you all along. That last message stung more than he probably intended. So Gianna had been talking about me behind my back. Preparing him for this moment, maybe. Poisoning the well. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat in my small apartment, looking at the stack of financial records I'd pulled out the night before. 4 years of payments. House purchase, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, even some of their utility bills when Richard claimed money was tight. The total was staggering. Over $1 million. $1 million I'd spent trying to buy my place in their lives, only to learn that my place could be revoked at any time at their whim. My phone rang. Richard again. Mom, Gianna wants to talk to you. She says there's been a misunderstanding. Put her on. There was a shuffle, then Gianna's voice, artificially sweet. Sandra, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. About the vacation, I never meant that you weren't welcome. I just thought it might be nice for Richard and me to have some alone time. You know? Like a second honeymoon. A second honeymoon to Disney World with your 2 children? Silence. Gianna, let me ask you something. In the 4 years you've lived in the house I bought you, how many times have you thanked me? Another silence. How many times have you included me in holiday planning without me having to invite myself? How many times have you called just to check on me? Sandra, The answer is 0. To all of those questions. 0. My voice was steady, matter of fact. You've treated me like an ATM with legs. Take the money, ignore the person. Well, this ATM is officially closed. You're making a huge mistake. Her voice turned cold, the fake sweetness evaporating. Richard will never forgive you for this. Then he'll have to live with that. Because I'm done living with being treated like dirt in exchange for financial generosity. I hung up and immediately called Carol. How soon can we list? By the end of the week, my phone was ringing constantly. Not just Richard and Gianna anymore, but my sister Helen, my brother-in-law Marcus, even my elderly neighbor Mrs. Peterson. Gianna had clearly launched a full-scale campaign to paint me as the villain. Sandra, what's gotten into you? Helen's voice was sharp with disapproval when she called Thursday evening. Richard called me in tears. He says you're selling their house out from under them over some silly argument about a vacation. It wasn't a silly argument, Helen. And it's my house, not theirs. That's not the point. Family doesn't treat family this way. You're being vindictive. The word stung because part of me wondered if she was right. Was I being vindictive? Or was I finally standing up for myself after years of being taken for granted? Helen, when was the last time Richard called you just to chat? When was the last time Gianna sent you a birthday card or invited you to dinner? That's different. I'm not their mother. Exactly. I am their mother. Or I was, until Gianna decided I wasn't family enough to vacation with them. My voice cracked slightly. Do you know how that felt? To be told by my own son that his wife doesn't want me around. Helen's tone softened marginally. Sandra, I'm sure he didn't mean it that way. He meant it exactly that way. And now everyone's upset because I'm finally treating them the way they've been treating me. The hardest call came from my grandson Tyler. He was only 16, and his voice shook when he called me Saturday morning. Grandma Sandra? Mom says we might have to move. She says you're making us leave our house. Is that true? My heart shattered. Tyler was innocent in all this. So was his younger sister Emma. They didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of adult dysfunction. Tyler, honey, it's complicated. But I want you to know that whatever happens with the house has nothing to do with how much I love you and Emma. But why are you doing this? Dad's been crying. I've never seen Dad cry before. The guilt hit me like a physical weight. Maybe Helen was right. Maybe I was being cruel. These were my grandchildren, my family. Was I really willing to uproot their lives over my hurt feelings? That afternoon I drove past the house. Richard's car was in the driveway along with 2 others I didn't recognize. Through the window I could see people gathered in the living room. A family meeting, no doubt. Planning their strategy to convince the crazy old woman to change her mind. I almost turned around and went home. Almost called Carol and told her to take the house off the market. But then I remembered the look on Gianna's face when she told me Richard didn't want me on the vacation. The smug satisfaction. The way she'd enjoyed delivering that blow. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Nancy. Heard about what's happening with Richard's family. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. That girl has been trouble since day one. Nancy lived next door to Richard and Gianna. If anyone knew what was really going on in that house, it would be her. I called her immediately. Nancy, what do you mean trouble since day one? Oh honey, the things I've overheard. The way she talks about you when you're not around. Just last month, I heard her on the phone with someone saying how she couldn't wait until you were too old to interfere in their lives. My blood ran cold. She said that. Among other things. She's been poison about you from the beginning, Sandra. Always complaining to the other neighborhood wives about how you're too involved, too controlling. She makes it sound like you're some kind of burden instead of the blessing you've been to that family. The pieces started falling into place. The way Gianna would suddenly change the subject when I walked into a room. The forced smiles. The way she'd started declining my invitations to lunch or shopping trips over the past year. There's something else, Nancy continued hesitantly. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I heard her talking to someone about putting you in a nursing home. She said Richard's inheritance would be better spent on their kids' college funds than on keeping you comfortable in your old age. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto my kitchen counter. Nursing home. Inheritance. She was already planning my life around her convenience, spending money I hadn't even decided to leave them. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. Nancy, are you sure you heard that correctly? I'm sorry, Sandra. I know it's hard to hear. But I've been watching that girl systematically isolate you from your own son for months now. This vacation thing? It's just the latest step in her plan. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment for a long time. The guilt I'd been feeling began to transform into something else. Clarity. This wasn't about a vacation at all. This was about Gianna establishing dominance, proving that she could control Richard completely, even when it meant hurting his mother. The house sale wasn't vindictive. It was self-preservation. My phone rang again. Richard. Mom, please. I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. I shouldn't have excluded you from the vacation. Gianna agrees. We want you to come with us. Richard, when did you become such a good liar? What? Mom, I'm telling the truth. No, honey. You're telling me what Gianna coached you to say because she's finally realized that her little power play might cost her the house. My voice was steady now, sure. But it's too late for apologies. The house goes on the market Monday morning. The for sale sign went up on Monday morning at 9 o'clock sharp. By noon, Carol had called to tell me we already had 3 interested parties wanting to schedule viewings. The house was that desirable, in that perfect neighborhood I'd chosen specifically because I thought it would be where my grandchildren grew up. Richard showed up at my apartment that evening without calling first. He looked terrible, unshaven and hollow-eyed like he hadn't slept in days. Mom, we need to talk. Really talk. Not through lawyers or real estate agents. Just you and me. I let him in, though every instinct told me this was another manipulation attempt. He sat heavily on my sofa, the same sofa I'd bought when I downsized from the family home to make the house purchase possible for him. I know you think Gianna put me up to this, but she didn't. She doesn't even know I'm here. He ran his hands through his hair. Mom, I'm scared. Not just about losing the house. I'm scared I've lost you. You told me I wasn't family, Richard. Your exact words. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. His voice broke. But Mom, if you sell the house, where are we supposed to go? We can't afford anything decent on my salary alone. Maybe Gianna could get a job. He flinched. She's busy with the kids. Tyler's 16 and Emma's 14. They're hardly toddlers who need constant supervision. I studied my son's face, seeing the exhaustion and stress. Richard, what happened to you? You used to be so independent, so strong. When did you become afraid of your own wife? I'm not afraid of her. Then why haven't you stood up to her? In 4 years of marriage, when has she ever been wrong about anything? When have you ever disagreed with her in front of me? He was quiet for a long moment. Then barely audible. She says I'm lucky she married me. That women like her don't usually end up with men like me. My heart broke for him. Men like what, honey? You know. Not particularly successful. Not rich. Not exciting. He looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy who used to come to me when bullies picked on him at school. She could have married anyone, Mom. She chose me. I owe her. Richard, love isn't a debt. Marriage isn't a business transaction where one person gets to be cruel because they're supposedly doing the other a favor. She's not cruel. She just has strong opinions about things. I wanted to tell him what Nancy had overheard about the nursing home comments and the complaints to the neighbors, but I could see he wasn't ready to hear it. He was so deep in Gianna's web of manipulation that criticism of her felt like criticism of his own judgment. Richard, do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up? The question seemed to surprise him. A teacher. Elementary school. What happened to that dream? Gianna said teachers don't make enough money. She said if I really loved her, I'd want to provide better for our family. So you became an insurance adjuster instead. It pays better. Do you like it? He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally. No. I hate it. Every single day I hate it. We sat in silence for a while. Outside I could hear the evening sounds of my neighborhood. Kids playing, dogs barking, the normal sounds of families living their lives. Happy sounds that felt very far away from the sadness filling my living room. Mom, what if I talked to Gianna? What if I insisted that we include you more? Would you consider keeping the house? Richard, honey, this isn't about being included more. This is about respect. Basic human decency. I'm your mother. Not some obligation you have to manage around your wife's preferences. I know, but. There's no but. Either I matter to you as a person or I don't. Either my feelings have value or they don't. I leaned forward, taking his hands in mine. And frankly, the fact that we're even having this conversation tells me everything I need to know. He pulled his hands away. So that's it? You're just done with us. I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done being treated like an ATM. I'm done watching my son disappear into someone else's idea of who he should be. I stood up. The house sells, Richard. Find somewhere else to live. He left without another word. But I could see him through my window, sitting in his car for almost 20 minutes before finally driving away. The next morning my phone rang earlier than usual. It was Helen again, but this time her tone was different. Sandra, I owe you an apology. I had lunch with Martha Henderson yesterday. Martha was Helen's oldest friend and the biggest gossip in 3 counties. If there were rumors floating around about my family situation, Martha would know them all. She told me some things about Gianna that I didn't know. Things she's been saying around town about you. What kind of things? Horrible things. About how you're getting senile and need supervision. About how you're becoming a burden and Richard's too kind to put you in your place. Helen's voice was tight with anger. Sandra, I had no idea she'd been spreading lies about you. What else did Martha say? That Gianna's been telling people you're trying to control their marriage with money. That you threatened to cut them off financially if Richard didn't divorce her. Helen paused. That's not true, is it? Of course it's not true. Helen, until last week, I'd never threatened to cut off anything. I just kept paying and paying, thinking that's what good mothers do. I'm so sorry I doubted you. When Richard called crying about losing the house, I just assumed. You assumed I was the problem. Just like everyone else. The truth was spreading, but it felt too little, too late. The damage was done. The house sold in 8 days. 8 days from listing to accepted offer. Cash deal, 30-day close. Carol called me with the news while I was having my morning coffee, and for a moment, I felt dizzy with the finality of it all. Congratulations, Sandra. They offered $20,000 over asking price. No inspections, no financing contingencies. These buyers really want your property. My property. Even now it was hard to think of it that way. For 4 years it had been Richard's house in my mind, even though my name was on every legal document. When do they want to close? 3 weeks. The buyers are relocating from California and need to be in by the 1st of next month. 3 weeks. I hung up and immediately called Richard. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been sitting by the phone. The house sold, I said without preamble. Silence. Then a choke sound that might have been a sob. 3 weeks to close. You need to start looking for somewhere else to live. Mom, please. I'm begging you. Name your price. What do you want? An apology? Money? What? Richard, there is no price. This isn't a negotiation. But where are we supposed to go? Do you know what rent costs these days? We'll have to move to some terrible neighborhood, some tiny apartment. Emma will have to change schools in her sophomore year. The guilt hit me again, sharp and familiar. Emma. Sweet Emma, who had never done anything wrong except have Gianna for a mother. But I pushed the feeling down. This situation wasn't my fault, and it wasn't my responsibility to fix. You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and cried. Not for Richard and Gianna, but for the family I thought I had. For the grandmother I thought I was. For the future I'd imagined, where my grandchildren would visit me in the house I'd bought for their parents. Where holidays would be warm and welcoming. Where I'd be valued and included instead of tolerated. That afternoon Tyler called me. Grandma, Dad told us about the house. I don't understand why you're doing this to us. Tyler, honey, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just taking back what belongs to me. But this is our home. I've lived here since I was 12. All my friends are here. My girlfriend lives 3 blocks away. The pain in his voice was real and it cut deep. But so was the pain I'd been carrying for years, being slowly erased from my own son's life. Tyler, can I ask you something? When was the last time your mom invited me for dinner? When was the last time she called to check on me when I was sick? I don't know. That's not really my business. You're right, it's not. But it should have been hers. I'm your grandmother, Tyler. I should matter to this family. You do matter. No, sweetheart. I matter when it's convenient. When you need something. But the rest of the time, I'm just an obligation your parents have to manage. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Emma called me and she was angry. Grandma Sandra. I heard Mom on the phone yesterday. She was talking to Aunt Lisa about you. Aunt Lisa was Gianna's sister. Equally self-centered and manipulative. What did she say, honey? She said you were getting crazy in your old age and Richard should have seen this coming. She said you've always been jealous of her. And now you're trying to punish Dad for choosing her over you. Emma's voice was shaking. But Grandma, that's not true, is it? You're not crazy. No, Emma. I'm not crazy. I'm just tired of being treated badly. Mom also said something about putting you in a home when you get sicker. She said it would be better for everyone. My blood turned to ice. So Nancy had been right. Gianna was already planning my future, discussing my life like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. Emma, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not sick. I am not crazy. And no one gets to decide where I live except me. I know, Grandma. I'm not stupid. I see how Mom treats you. How she rolls her eyes when Dad wants to invite you over. How she always has an excuse when you want to spend time with us. Smart girl. Smarter than her father, apparently. Emma, whatever happens with the house, I want you to know that I love you and Tyler more than anything. This isn't about you kids. I know. But Grandma? I'm kind of glad you're doing this. Mom's been acting like she owns everything and everyone. Maybe it's time someone stood up to her. That evening, Richard showed up at my door again. But this time he wasn't alone. Gianna was with him and she looked furious. We need to talk, she announced, pushing past me into my apartment without being invited. Actually, we don't. I remained by the open door. You have 3 weeks to pack. That's all the talking we need to do. Sandra, you're being ridiculous. Gianna's mask of politeness was completely gone now. This whole thing is petty and vindictive. You're willing to make your own grandchildren homeless over hurt feelings. I'm not making anyone homeless. I'm simply reclaiming my property. Your property? She laughed bitterly. You gave us that house. You can't just take it back because you didn't get invited on one vacation. Actually, I can. Because I never gave you anything. I bought a house and allowed Richard to live in it. My name is on the deed. My money paid for it. My decision to sell it. Richard stepped forward. Mom, Gianna has something to tell you. Don't you, honey? Gianna's jaw tightened, but she managed to force out the words. I'm sorry I excluded you from the vacation. It was wrong. The apology was so clearly rehearsed, so obviously insincere, that I almost laughed. Thank you for that, I said calmly. But it's too late. The house is sold. What do you mean, too late? Gianna's composure cracked completely. We apologized. You apologize because you're losing the house. Not because you meant it. Not because you understand what you did wrong. You apologize because Richard finally told you the consequences of treating me badly. She stared at me with naked hatred. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son chose someone else over you. No, Gianna. I'm a woman who finally learned the difference between being loved and being used. I held the door open wider. You have 3 weeks. Use them wisely. 6 months after the house sold, I was sitting in my new garden when Richard called. I'd bought a small cottage with some of the proceeds from the sale, something manageable for a woman my age but still comfortable. It had a beautiful backyard where I could grow tomatoes and roses, something I'd never had time for when I was busy financing other people's dreams. Mom, we need to talk. His voice sounded different. Quieter. More like the son I remembered before Gianna had reshaped him into someone I barely recognized. What about Richard? I left her. I set down my pruning shears and sat heavily on my garden bench. What? I filed for divorce yesterday. I'm staying at a hotel until I can find an apartment. His voice broke slightly. You were right about everything, Mom. About all of it. I waited, letting him find his words. After we lost the house, everything changed. Gianna blamed me for not being able to control you. She said I was weak, that a real man would have found a way to make his mother cooperate. He paused. But it was more than that. Once the financial pressure hit, once she couldn't rely on your money anymore, she just gave up pretending to care about our family. What do you mean? She started staying out late. Claimed she was job hunting, but I found out she was seeing someone else. Some guy she met at a coffee shop who has money. His laugh was bitter. Turns out, financial security was more important to her than marriage vows. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness for Richard, vindication for myself, and something that might have been relief. The truth was finally coming out. The kids took it hard at first, but honestly, they've been happier since I told Gianna to leave. Tyler said something that really got to me. He said our house had been tense for years, and he was glad the fighting was over. How are you managing financially? It's tight, but we're okay. I went back to school, Mom. Part-time while I work. I'm getting my teaching certification. Richard, that's wonderful. It's what I should have done years ago. What I would have done if I hadn't been so focused on trying to impress someone who was never going to be impressed. He was quiet for a moment. Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but would you be willing to see me? To meet somewhere and talk? I looked around my peaceful garden, at the life I'd built for myself in the months since I'd stopped trying to buy love from people who didn't value me. I had new friends now, women I'd met at the community center. I had hobbies and interests that weren't centered around fixing other people's problems. I had peace. Yes, I said finally. I'd like that. We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory where we could talk without the weight of history pressing down on us. Richard looked older, thinner, but somehow more like himself than he had in years. I owe you the biggest apology of my life, he began. Not just for the vacation thing, but for years of taking you for granted. For letting Gianna treat you badly. For forgetting that you're my mother and you deserve respect. Richard, please let me finish. I know selling the house felt cruel to you, but it was the wake-up call I needed. I was so deep in Gianna's manipulation that I couldn't see how far I'd fallen from the person I used to be. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I know I have to earn that back. But I want to try if you'll let me. I studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd grown used to. But all I saw was my son, really my son for the first time in years. What about the kids? They want to see you. Tyler especially. He said he's been wanting to call you, but didn't know if you'd want to hear from him after everything that happened. Of course I want to hear from him. From both of them. Emma's been asking about your new house. She wants to know if you have room for them to visit. I smiled, thinking of the 2 small bedrooms upstairs that I'd been hoping to fill with grandchildren's laughter again someday. I have room. We talked for 2 hours, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. Richard told me about his job, his classes, his plans for the future. I told him about my garden, my new friends, the pottery class I joined. We were careful with each other, testing the boundaries of this new relationship, but it felt genuine in a way that interactions with him hadn't felt in a long time. As we were leaving, Richard stopped and turned to me. Mom, can I ask you something? Were you scared? When you decided to sell the house, were you scared of losing us completely? Terrified, I admitted. But I was more scared of losing myself. I understand that now. And I'm proud of you for being brave enough to save yourself. 3 weeks later, Tyler and Emma came for their first visit to my cottage. Tyler helped me plant new rose bushes while Emma organized my kitchen with the efficiency of someone who'd inherited her grandmother's practical nature. Grandma, Emma said as we made dinner together. Are you happier now? I looked around my small, cozy kitchen, at my granddaughter helping me chop vegetables, at Tyler visible through the window as he worked in the garden. I thought about the peace I felt every morning when I woke up in my own space, free from the anxiety of wondering how I'd failed my family this time. Yes, sweetheart. I'm much happier. Good. You deserve to be happy. That evening, as we sat on my back porch watching the sunset, Richard called to check on the kids. After Emma handed me the phone, he said something that made everything worthwhile. Thank you, Mom. For what? For teaching me that love isn't supposed to hurt. That family isn't supposed to be a burden you carry, but a joy you share. His voice was thick with emotion. I'm sorry it took me so long to learn that lesson. It's never too late to learn, honey. As I hung up and looked at my grandchildren laughing together on my porch swing, I realized that selling the house hadn't destroyed my family. It had saved it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior, even when that someone is your own child. I had my family back, but more importantly, I had myself back. And at 70 years old, I was finally free.